Hello and welcome to the show. I am here on F1 2015, continuing my career mode, and following on from Monaco, where the Mercedes had an absolute disaster, I currently have a relatively nice lead at the top of the table, and our next race heads to Canada. This is a circuit that I love, one of my best circuits in F1 2015, so I was hoping that I could do well here again. Admittedly, there are a lot of straights that the Mercedes-powered cars will probably quite like. However, overall, I tend to be pretty damn quick around here. There is also always the possibility, always the chance of some rain. In practice, I may have bumped over the curbs a little bit. The final chicane is one of my favourite corners on any track, really. It's such a fantastically fast section, especially in a Formula 1 car. You can really attack that area. That time round I got things a little bit wrong, but yeah, it's such a lovely corner. And all of these other sort of, the kind of fast chicanes around here, I really do quite like racing this circuit. This is the one section that I was having trouble with, and the one section that I was quite slow through. The second sector of the lap, it was getting the power down to go onto this back straight. That was where I was having real issues with my car. I just couldn't quite carry the speed. On this, that was my fastest lap of practice. I actually bumped the wall a little bit on the outside. It was only a very tiny scrape, and I could get away with it. Overtaking is surprisingly difficult around this circuit. Again, I was really pushing things there with a little bump on the outside barrier. It's very easy to do. It's again much like Monaco. There are walls either side on a lot of the parts of this track, and it doesn't take you to be out of position very much to have all manner of issues. As we come past the Wall of Champions, don't end up in it, which is always useful. And I would cross the line with a 13.6, which I was pretty pleased about. It was a decent lap time, and by the end of practice, we were all pretty damn close. At the top of the table, Hamilton went quickest, with me coming in second, with Vettel in third. It's a very familiar look at the top, although Ricciardo was doing really well around here, which is peculiar. You wouldn't expect the Red Bulls to be doing good at this circuit, but yeah, Ricciardo was up in sixth. That's probably the highest we've seen him. They tended to qualify, certainly that the Red Bulls and Toro Rossos have qualified terribly, and then moved up through the order during the race. Further down, again, no massive surprises really in the order, except for Massa at the bottom, who had an accident, I think, and only set like one or so laps. It's an identical time to the Toro Rosso of Sainz. To qualifying, well, the sun came out, but honestly, nothing much happened in the first qualifying session. I wanted to get through it on primes, which I did successfully, as did Hamilton. Went slightly quicker than me on the prime tyres. Further down, again, no real huge surprises. Button managed to make it out of Q1, as did Maldonado. Alonso would go out. Both of the Saubers would go, as would both of the Manners, as you would perhaps expect. In the second qualifying session, I was actually having some trouble getting any speed out of the car. I couldn't barely get it under the 114s. I ended up running twice with the cars, used up 2 sets of tyres. Admittedly, you know, a 13.999 is not exactly, you know, I was safe enough to be going through it. I wasn't expecting to go out, but yeah, I was having trouble actually getting some speed. On a later lap, though, I would get the fastest lap that I did around this circuit, a 13.2, which put me well clear at the front. I don't know why. I had so many laps in the very low 14s, high 13s. Yeah, just something wasn't working in that particular session. Vettel made it through on the prime tyres again. The top 10, relatively unsurprising. Ricciardo was still putting in some impressive times. Grosjean made it through, as did Hülkenberg and Perez. So both the Force Indias out of that qualifying session. And further down, I think it was Maldonado was one of the cars to go. Yeah. There was no huge surprises in this one, unlike the mess that was Monaco. Things were much calmer. To the final qualifying session, and again, it was a very similar story. My first run with the car, I didn't get under the 114s. The second run, the opening lap that I did with the tyres, again, was only a 114. So it did have me on pole at this moment in time, but I wasn't really comfortable. We'd certainly been seeing the Mercedes do into the 113s. We'd seen them do, was it 113.6, I think? earlier on, so I know that I needed to go faster. At this stage, Hulkenberg was up in 4th. The Force Indias were much happier around here. They haven't had a particularly good season, either of them, but yeah, they were much preferring this very, very fast Montreal circuit. I was running the car with the low downforce preset, the lowest downforce preset setup that you can go, because, well, there's so many straights around here. Do have to be careful. The car will slide around a little bit, especially this is the section, or this corner, in fact, is where I made up my time. If you get things right, you can carry so much speed through here, but you've really got to get things right, attack the curbs, get the car through the corner as nicely as possible. If you do hit the curbs, though, you've got to be careful that it doesn't send the car sideways. And that lap there, as we cross the line, is 13.3. I was pretty pleased with that. That was good enough for me, but I didn't really have bothered, as nobody went quickly. I don't know what was going on. Nobody went quickly at all in this final session. The closest Mercedes was at 14.6. Hamilton was down in 6th. I had no clue what was going on. They were in the 13s in practice. Absolutely terrible qualifying session for Hamilton. Vettel was in 5th. Ricciardo was perhaps the surprise of this qualifying, having himself up into a 3rd place, easily the best starting position for a Red. I think it's the first time we've seen a Red Bull in the top 5 or 6 in this career playthrough. Grosjean didn't have quite as impressive qualifying down in 10th. Come race day, and well, it was sunny to start with. At least I never quite trust the weather at this particular circuit. There's always that possibility of rain. It had been threatening showers on the little computery thing throughout all of the sessions, so yeah, I was always slightly sort of thinking of that. The other thing that I had to deal with is getting off the line. I still cannot figure out how to get these cars off the line. Pretty much if I qualify on pole, I am expecting to be going into the first corner in second. Is about as good of an outcome as I can expect. The Mercedes are just too fast off the line. I don't get a terrible start, certainly compared to the rest of the cars. Looking in the wing mirrors, the Red Bulls and the Williams, I wasn't that much slower, but just Rosberg was gone. I chucked it down the inside at turn 1. I thought I'd have a go, see if I could get the position back from the Mercedes, but to no avail. Behind us, though, there was all manner of side-by-side action going on between the Red Bull and the Williams, and this helped me and Rosberg massively. We can see by the time we get to the end of the first sector, I'm a 1.5 seconds ahead of the Red Bull. So as they sort of slowed each other down, me and Rosberg were gone. Just look at the mini-map, the size of the gap we got in the first half a lap. We absolutely flew away from the rest of the field as they were all busy squabbling, all fighting for position up towards the hairpin for the first time, and the gap was out to 2.5 seconds back to 3rd place, although that one won't have helped. Tried to get the power down a little too soon, ran wide again, just getting away with a little deflection off the wall there. It didn't take me long, though, to reel Rosberg back in as we came around for this second lap. Of course, we haven't got DRS enabled as of yet. It was up to 4.5 seconds back to now the Williams of Bottas. We pulled a huge gap. Now, there were some yellow flags going on here. I was busy concentrating on the Mercedes ahead. Didn't notice the hidden McLaren of Alonso, who was limping back to the pits, that I very, very nearly ended up in the back of. Yeah, I really got caught out by that one. Messed up the chicane, bumped across a curb, got the car very, very sideways, which is less than ideal. Managed to keep it all together. That was a slightly scary moment. They just completely hidden behind Rosberg's car. I wasn't paying attention to the mini-map, and yeah, the sudden McLaren in front of me. One of the worst places, really, for having a sudden car ahead. However, it didn't take me long before I would get on the back of the Mercedes. The Mercedes, or the AI cars in general, were so slow through that chicane. It caught me out the first time I was right behind him, gave him a bit of a nudge, a bit of a hurry-up bump through the chicane. I get the second sort of shot of DRS down towards turn 1, but turn 1, this is an awkward place to get an overtake done. If you go on the inside for turn 1, it puts you on the outside for turn 2, and turn 2 is such a long corner that if a car can sort of, like Rosberg there, stayed around the outside of turn 1, then I'm kind of screwed, really. There's not much that I can really do. I thought Rosberg was going defensive. I was tempted to have a dive at this section, but this is where I had troubles getting the power down here. This is where the Mercedes had the advantage over my Ferrari. I couldn't get the power down this sort of back straight as nicely. I was a lot closer, though, than I had been before. If I could be neat across the chicane, get a good run off of this turn. I stood a chance of getting an overtake done without having to worry about DRS into the hairpin. I get the Ferrari to the inside, get the pass done, run a little bit wide on the exit, and the Mercedes, of course, is cutting back to the inside. It gives me a little bit of a bump on the way past, but as we run down towards the start-finish straight, I can flip the DRS open, and I will claim the lead. Of course, there's nothing. The Mercedes is a quick car in a straight line, certainly, but with no downforce on the car, and with DRS open, yeah, there's no match. Running, you can sort of run that way. You can be very aggressive along the curbs. The risk that you run in doing so is spinning the car, as you saw there. I hit the curb a little too hard on the inside. I didn't really mean to take that particular line. You saw how unhappy the back of the car got. You've got to be very, very careful with running the curbs through there, because it's very easy to lose a lot of time by spinning the vehicle. On to the next lap, and Rosberg was using the DRS to keep up. I was going defensive into turn 1, forgotten my own advice about the difficulties of overtaking on the inside, and Rosberg promptly gets past me. And joy of joys, the other Mercedes has caught up. As we were busy fighting, we did have a huge lead by the end of the first couple of laps, but it didn't take long for Hamilton to reel us in as we started to fight. Again, overtaking it anywhere other than kind of the first couple of corners is really difficult around this circuit. The hairpin is perhaps the other best spot, but I just couldn't get the run down here. I could never quite get close enough again at the hairpin to really get an effective overtake done. So it was really just, on the most part, down to the turn 1-2 bit, and that was being such a pain in the arse to get the car past. And now we had the other Mercedes for company as we leave the hairpin. Of course, he will have the DRS on me. I will have the DRS on Rosberg as we head now down towards the incredibly fast chicane. If I was closer, you can have a go at the inside into the chicane, but I was never really close enough to try very much. It's attack the curbs, get my car. I can get the run off the turn. I can get my car to the inside, but it's the same story, as I just can't quite do anything through here. I was trying a slightly different tactic, outbraked myself a little bit. It does put me on the inside for turn 2, and managed to stay side by side with Rosberg. He sticks to the outside of my car, but you're not going to fit around the outside there, has to back off, and in the end lets Hamilton pass. I was trying to brake just a tad later so I could almost run a little bit deeper into turn 1. I ran far deeper than I expected. I was trying to kind of cut the Mercedes off by running a little deeper. I did make a bit of a mistake on that one there with a wheel on the grass. Then I get a big slide trying to get the power down. Hamilton goes up the inside into this next chicane, but he's not brave enough to hold it there. I give him plenty of space if he wants to go on the outside, but he opts out of that one, which means that I managed to keep hold of the lead as we come up towards the hairpin. Again, both Mercedes were close behind and would have a big old DRS train going on down this straight. Not that it really mattered, as it was time to take a trip to the pits. Now, with the recent update for this game, the cars will no longer, like teammates will no longer come in, or the AI teammates will no longer come in and stack behind their other driver, so we can, well, it won't mess up Rosberg's race as much as it would have done previously. I was just hoping that we would have a decent enough pit stop that we could keep ahead of Hamilton, which indeed we did, which is very, very useful. The other slight concern was coming out of the pits, as there are cars that were still going around. I didn't want to get caught up in traffic. I knew I needed to have a half-decent outlap here to try and stay ahead of Rosberg. As we leave the pit lane, I think I may have had a wheel slightly on the grass. There was a car very close. It was Perez's Force India, but I managed to get out just ahead of it, and Hamilton gets stuck behind the Force India, which was very, very useful for me, which yeah, pretty much about as good as I could have expected. Clear track ahead of me and a Force India between me and the Mercedes, just enough to slow down Hamilton. That's what I was hoping on this outlap, and I got a half decent gap back to Hamilton on the outlap. It was Rosberg though who had a fantastic in-lap and jumped the pair of us that yeah, put him out ahead of me. I did not want to spend any more time stuck behind a Mercedes, and with Rosberg on some cold tyres, I saw an opportunity to have a dive up the inside into this is an unusual overtaking place, but I gave it a go. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it get far enough alongside, and now Hamilton was coming to join in. I get another love bump from the the Mercedes. I'm stuck right on the outside. Hamilton's got the slipstream and a much better run on all of us. Hamilton's up the inside. I back out because things are going to end disastrously. Unfortunately, the two Mercedes slow each other down. I was trying to do a cutback on the pair of them, but Hamilton got a little bit in the way there and may have given him a slight bump. And now I was stuck looking at the back of the two Mercs. I think Vettel was actually leading the race at this moment in time, hadn't come into the pits as of yet. Yeah, it was a little bit unfortunate. Stuck looking at the back of the two cars. A couple of laps later, and I was still trying to find a way past Hamilton, this time having a big dive again at the first corner. I just couldn't quite do it. I could not get my car to sort of a good enough position through turn one to manage to block them off through the second part, and Hamilton would keep getting the place back. I was trying to read or to try and get the move that almost worked on Rosberg to work on Hamilton, but he was too fast through this section, and then we're going to lose all of the time through here. I went a little bit brave on the brakes, ran a tad wide, and that slowed me down even more on the run down this back straight. Yeah, was causing a little bit of a problem. The best bet for overtaking was really be very quick through the chicane. That's what I was going for. The problem is when there's a Mercedes right in front of me, you got to be very careful you don't end up in the back of them as they're quite slow through the second part. I end up attacking the curb quite a lot on the inside, get away without managing to spin the car, and that time round I carry enough speed to get it ahead of Hamilton before we come to the corner, which means I don't have to take such a tight line and there's no room for him to go around the outside, which means I move myself up into what is now second place, and I had to go do the hunting down of Rosberg all over again. In clean air, I put the car into the rich fuel mode. I'd saved plenty of fuel through the early part of the race, went on the absolute attack, and as Rosberg got very close to the wall of champions, I went to set my fastest lap of the race. 13.9 on the prime tyres is mighty fast in race conditions. But again, we have exactly the same story. I almost made it stick around the outside of turn 2. Again, get a bit of a bump from the Mercedes and just run out of road. He's again having to go defensive through this next section, slows me down, and guess who's coming to join in the fun again? The second, I had a lovely gap back to the Mercedes of Hamilton, and the second me and Rosberg start fighting, it's all gone. And now it's a three-way battle for the lead. Yet again, very good fun, but trying to get past these Mercedes was such a bloody pain in the arse. And yeah, it was coming down the back straight again. I was going to have to try and go for the same move that worked on Hamilton, get it to work on Rosberg. Actually, a little bit closer this time around. Carried so much speed through the first part. I daren't take going across the curb like that is not a particularly good line. It's a lot slower than taking it the normal way. The problem is, if I try to take it the normal way, there's a Mercedes right in the way, and yeah, they're really slow on that final chicane. So I had to go up the inside. Again, it's very risky. You're likely to unsettle the car, get it sideways. That time though, it got the job done. There was a little gap. The Mercedes had a look at a little gap, but it did get me up to the lead. But it wasn't all over yet, because now I was leading the trade of 3 cars, and they both had DRS on me, and of course all of the power of the Mercedes engine. Rosberg got brave, tried to go around the outside at the final chicane. That is not a manoeuvre that is very likely to work. Certainly not from as far back as he tried to get that one to go. He ended up very slow through the chicane, slowed Hamilton down massively. I mean, they lost a couple of seconds in that one, and with only 2 laps to go and me now in clean air with no DRS for the Mercedes, relatively straightforward final a couple of laps. I just didn't have to make no silly mistakes, and things were going to be good. Now, you may notice on the scoreboard that all of a sudden, as we come to this final lap, there's no sight of Hamilton. That confused me as well, as Bottas found himself up into 3rd place. The final couple of laps were relatively calm. I run very close to the wall of champions out of the chicane, but yeah, Bottas was to end up in 3rd, which was a peculiar. It surprised me, of course, after the gigantic fight I'd had with the 2 Mercedes. Yeah, it was a slightly different podium than expected. My Ferrari, it's got a few scars on it. There was the odd little bit of bumping here and there. A thoroughly enjoyable race, though. It was really very good fun. Having to fight constantly with the 2 Mercedes. It is good to see the Williams up on the podium yet again. But apart from the terrible race at Malaysia, has had a pretty damn good season here as well. Now, I was kind of working on the assumption that Hamilton had probably had a coming together with Rosberg. He would end up in 5th place. Ricciardo's fantastic Canadian Grand Prix continued, managing to end up in 4th. You see, Hamilton had to take an extra pit stop. That's where he vanished to. Massa would go up into 6th, ahead of the two Force Indias. That, again, they were having a pretty decent Canadian Grand Prix. Button got some points in the McLaren in 9th, and Maldonado got his first points of the season, getting 10th. Two Toro Rossos just outside the points. Kvyat's not having a good season at all, down in 13th. Grosjean, he dropped down to 14th, which also was another thing that slightly confused me. And then we have all the cars at the bottom. Vettel ended up 19th. Alonso, where we saw he was broken, crawling back to the pits. Ericsson ended up a lap down. There was some drama further back. So I went and had a look at the replay to try and see what on earth went on with all sorts of cars in this one. So we start with Alonso. That's what the yellow flag was for at the very start of the race. They were going too wide through this first of the chicanes. Toro Rosso, it doesn't quite give the McLaren enough space, just bumps his front wheel as they leave the chicane, puts the McLaren into the wall, and as we can see, Alonso's McLaren's got a flat tyre, and that's a long way to go around the track to crawl back to the pits. That's why he was going so slow on the back straight, when we had to sort of swerve and avoid the very stricken McLaren. So Vettel's was a more curious one. I don't quite know, because he led the race after all the pit stops kind of filtered, or as the pit stops were filtering through, sorry. Vettel was leading the race at one point. He came into the pits, came out again in the position you would expect him to be in here, which was, I think, 5th at the time, and then decides to dive into the pits again. Now, you'll notice the tyres. So this was after the first pit stop. It looks like they put him back out on the wrong tyres, possibly. And then he comes into the pits to get some new tyres, and then they still put him on the wrong tyres. Which is I mean, it's possible that the replay isn't quite showing the tyres correctly, but either way, he did an extra pit stop for tyres that I don't know why. I have no idea what caused him to do that, but that only dropped him down through the field a little bit more, as you can as you see here. It still puts him out in the mix. There is something wrong with his Ferrari. I don't know what, but he was really struggling after that second pit stop. Something was obviously not happy with the car, and he was stuck with this whole group of squabbling cars, Toro Rossos and Lotuses. This is where we find out what happened to Grosjean. I just assumed he was having a bad race. That was not the case. As they come up towards the final chicane, Vettel had a big dive and he bumped the Lotus well off the track. That's why the Lotus dropped all the way through the order when Grosjean's car had been doing pretty well this season. Yeah, as I said, the Ferrari was not happy. It was being mullered by, well, pretty much everything. This is why he ended up a lap down, though. Tried to go up the inside of Ericsson. The Sauber was still there. They locked wheels and both ended up getting stuck in a wall, knocked off both of their front wings. And, well, yeah, that was that. The cars kind of got stuck together as well as they were trying to free them. They would get going again, would both going to have an extra pit stop, hence why Vettel ended up touring the pits 3 times. Yeah, not the greatest of races for him. As far as Hamilton, well, I'd just assumed there had been contact between the two Mercedes. That wasn't really the case. For whatever reason, Mercedes came in for a pit stop with a lap to go. Now, I don't know if there was some damage to the car. Perhaps there's I don't know if they can have tyres going down, because there's clearly not a flat tyre, not a huge puncture on it. They don't seem to change his wing in the pit stop. I don't know. I have no idea why the Mercedes decided to come into the pit, but it does help me out in the championship as I now lead the way. I've got a 42-point margin back to Rosberg's Mercedes as he leapfrog Hamilton in the championship. Bottas moves up to 4th after Vettel has a rather terrible day. Further down, there is not a huge amount of change, although Ricciardo's decent race puts him an awful lot closer to Grosjean's Lotus. Further down, Perez is moving up the order slightly. The two McLarens have at least got some points. Maldonado gets his first points of the season. Sainz is the only car, excluding the two Manas, that hasn't got any points. To the Constructors' Championship, and Ferrari do still lead the way, despite Vettel failing to score any points, but it is rather close at the top. The Red Bulls do leapfrog the Lotuses, and the McLarens leapfrog the Toro Rossos. It's not a huge change, though, through the table. So yeah, a good Canadian Grand Prix for me. I think I've made the most, certainly, of the tracks that I know, because next time we go to Austria, a circuit that I have never driven in a Formula 1 car and never been particularly good at in any other vehicles. So Yeah, that one there should be interesting. But that is it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.